So, I mean, I want to start off by asking all of you a question. You can raise your hands. How many of you are actually loyal to a newspaper or a magazine today? Like loyal, actually loyal. 2. How many of you used to be loyal about 10 years ago? So there's clearly a time that we're going through where the space of media in our lives is now questionable, because there used to be a huge amount of loyalty that used to exist for media, but that doesn't quite exist anymore. And I want to talk to you today about a concept which I believe is the future in terms of how media would be relevant to us globally, and more specifically in the India case scenario as a society. So I want to talk about media plus governance, which is democracy 2.0. What did people like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, or Nelson Mandela have in common? Anybody, just any guess? Yeah? Anything else? Why is it jumping? They all went to jail. No, I'm kidding. Actually, they are all people who came from moral authority. Right? They were not people who had been selected as leaders or they came from a position. They actually came from a space where the crowd or the citizens actually believed in them, believed in what they said, and they had this sense of moral authority which was higher than any other formal authority that was bestowed on other people. Am I right? And I think media has played that role as well. So let's go back. Let's take a step back and look at the history of media. So 1455, the printing press actually comes into existence. 1640, around that time, is the world's first paper. And interestingly enough, around the same time, you have the 3 big revolutions of Europe. I mean, in America and then in Europe. Let's move ahead. 1894, the radio comes into existence. And you have the Great October Socialist Revolution that actually takes place. Next, television. Again, you have the Chinese and the Cuban revolutions that happen when television comes in. And then we have to wait a long time. Why? So then the internet comes in 1969, and it's only till 2000 that you actually see the revolutions in the MENA region, right? You have Egypt, you have Tunisia, but why this massive gap? And now I want to question why media is the way it is now. When I look back at this history, media started out of pamphleting. Generally during the early revolution stages in Europe. It was an opinion maker, it was someone who was canvassing for a cause, someone who was almost like a watchdog on governance at that point of time. As media became more mainstream, it was in their interest to actually not take on the government and also not take on advertisers. So they created the concept called objectivity, and they are generally the people who funded journalism schools. And so objectivity got ingrained in media, in journalists. And so they became objective. When the internet came in and it democratized media again, you had this whole new set of people who hadn't been trained like that, who came into mainstream conversations. And that is why when the power passed on for creation and distribution from mainstream media companies to alternate media, to social media, you had things like the Egyptian revolution coming into existence. But there's an interesting thing happening now. Since 2009, close to 500 of the world's top media companies have shut down. This could also happen in India. So what next? I mean, only one person raised their hand right now, 2 people, I think, who said, I am loyal to a media company. Now I want to leave the media aspect aside for a minute. Now I want to look at governance. Let's look at how democracy came into existence. The democracy was created at a time when there was no connectivity. So we had people in the India context at the village level putting out their representatives for discussion, then at the taluka level, then at the district level, then city level, state level, and so on. But when you create an organization or a set of elite people to take decisions for you, it works really well when it's efficient, but when it starts becoming inefficient or corrupt, then you can't get into that system, which is what's happening in most democracies around the world. So you've created this set of people who run the the countries, but you actually are not being part of that decision-making process, right? So how does this work together? I think media is at an interesting space today where it can solve this problem. We're sitting at, in my opinion, at the point where a revolution is possible, a radical shift in relationships between citizens, media, and governance is taking place right now, as we speak. WikiLeaks is an example of that, a very famous example of that, but there are lots of things like this happening in Africa. There are lots of things happening like this in India. So what are we talking about? If media, if you were to take away the power of decision making from the leaders who you have today and pass it on to people, and media was the framework, the backbone on which this could work, and if media was responsible for canvassing and taking stances, and political leaders and our leadership was actually in charge of, would actually go and canvass their cause, but not finally take the decision. The decision would be taken through systems. So if you can have an ATM machine, why can't you have an anytime voting machine? On the mobile phone, it's anyways possible, but you can have an anytime voting machine. So the media could actually fulfill its space of the fourth estate. The merger of media and governance, open media systems. What am I talking about? So now data is available. So there is a lot, we've all heard of open data systems where you have all this data, but how do you take that data and merge it into media to create open media systems? Do you know that, and the reason why I started the newspaper was that as a 17-year-old, if you want to give your view on the budget or if you want to give your view on the education policy, you can't get published on any mainstream paper in India. They have their columnists who are 50 and 60 years above, but they will not listen to a 17 or a 21 or a 25-year-old, even though that is the majority of the country. And we're talking about open media systems. Apple came and created a whole ecosystem around the iOS. Facebook did it around Facebook. Twitter is now doing it. So you have all these app ecosystems that are emerging. The moment you start opening up media, which today it isn't because people are wanting to control that, you could actually create a space where people could plug in. So someone there or someone sitting here has an idea, plug into the Times of India data system, create an app, piggyback on the ecosystem and actually showcase your work, your view, your opinion, or solve a problem. And that's possible. The future of media is about information. It's about being able to access it, manipulate it, learn from it, and improve our lives with it. The media's purpose is to give us information whenever, wherever we need it, and the ability to influence government through it. Media is anyways not objective. Why are we trying to believe that it is? Why are we trying to portray that it is? It's not. You watch a channel, you know where they're coming from. So take a stance, be open about it. But let everybody else be open about it as well. And strive for what is the right thing to do. The media is ubiquity, access, sharing, collaboration, connection. It works for you and me. It works for the citizens. It does not work for a set of people who own media companies. That's what it's supposed to be. And they have the power with them. Actually, they do. If you look at what happened in the recent past, every time the media has had the courage to use its tools, to use its information, to use its strength of distribution and might, they have brought about social change. They are able to bring out stories. The point is, do they have the conviction and the courage to do that? The future of media is about participation, empowerment, feedback loops, and organically created communities that directly influence governments. So it's just not mainstream. I mean, we're not hearing what's happening in a rural town in Bihar or Jharkhand or in Tamil Nadu. It's very urban-centric news and views that we're actually seeing. And so you have this massive rural-urban information divide that's taking place. So we're talking about localization, local communities. And you use that and you link it up to an open data system and you can find out what's happening there. And this has to be an industry shift, because if you don't do that, you're dead anyways. People are dying. You can delay it, but you can't avoid it. It's happened in the US. There are cities which don't have newspapers today. Thank you.